Hello everyone. Welcome to today's Facebook Live. It is still May. It feels like it's been May for about a year, but it's May. And so we are still promoting our So Confident class for the month, which is the Edgewater skirt. And our sample is made in this wonderful black and almost white stripe. And I love the way you have the connection of the stripes that don't have to be matched. And it really emphasizes this curved seam and another curved seam. This is a really fun and easy skirt to make. So this is the project for May. You can still sign up for it by the year and get all the projects, or just for May. We have a few kits left. This has been a really popular kit. We've sold a lot of them, but we do have a few left, so there's still time to get your kit. And I just want to remind you that we put together things for the year that fall into a wardrobe category. So we can reach back to, I think it's March maybe, and use our Crane Street tee, long sleeved with the embroidery design on it, to wear with this skirt. And for those of you who wanted the black, we did run out of the black, but we just got it back in, this French terry. You can make it either short sleeve or long sleeve, but the French terry is really beautifully soft and wonderful, and I think you'll really like it. And it's a wonderful substrate to do your hand embroidery on. And I need to ask Betsy this, but I think we are now opening this up so that you can order the embroidery kit separately. If it's not happening today, it's going to happen here in the next couple of days. So we had some questions about that. There were people who maybe didn't want the whole kit with the embroidery components. Some people just wanted these embroidery pieces and parts. That's happening or going to happen as a kit. So Edgewater skirt, Crane Street tee, embroidery kit, black's back in stock, all kinds of good things happening here. All right, so a few years ago, I went to Rome. Actually, it was after one of our Chateau Dumas workshops in France. And Nancy Schreiber and I flew to Rome and Florence, Italy. And I walked into a really, really, really expensive shop and saw this simple white blouse that had a woven fabric on the front and a knit fabric on the back. And the blouse was only a couple $1,000s. So I thought, well, you know what? I think I can probably do that. White linen, white knit, I can do that. So I came back home and sometime later made this. And so this is what I call the Liberty MixIt Fusion. So I took the Liberty pattern, which looks like this, has a round, almost Peter Pan type collar, buttons up clear to this collar, although you can wear the collar more open. It's this length, a shorter length, not short, but shorter, and it has a long sleeve with a turned up cuff. But it does have this signature design of the seam that connects the front to the back on the diagonal to the front, so it's very flattering. And you purposely have this longer back than front and somewhat of a vent, we'll call it, at the sides. So if you were to take the Liberty pattern and make it, this is what you would get. Well, that's not necessarily a neckline that I want for spring and summer. Maybe I want something a little cooler, a little more open. So I've always loved the neckline on the MixIt shirt. Now the MixIt pattern has 3 patterns in it. It has the shirt and the top and a tank, and this is the shirt. And you can see that it has this nice V-neck with a nice little narrow collar and has this little angle here, a little right angle. So just a nice little detail right there. But otherwise it's a very, very simple shirt. One of the differences is this Liberty shirt has a separate front facing, and the MixIt has a cut-on facing, so it's part of the front pattern piece. So I decided to blend these 2 patterns to make this and also what I have on. So basically I have a Liberty with a MixIt neckline, and I've shortened the sleeve and not turned up the sleeve as a cuff. So I wrote a whole tutorial about how to do this. It's called Liberty MixIt Fusion. It's about a 28-page tutorial that goes start to finish from pattern work, how to transpose the neckline, the MixIt neckline onto the Liberty, how to shorten the sleeve. This has also been lengthened 2 inches, and it shows you how to do that because the pattern pieces for this pattern are a little bit asymmetric, so there's a little bit of how to do that. It's not just the simplest of processes, particularly on the back since the back seam is so curved, but we show you how to do that in the tutorial. And then I tell you how to sew it. So that tutorial is key to really making this, but essentially I took the Liberty pattern. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat today and I don't know why. Must be the weather, it's raining. Took the Liberty front pattern piece and laid it on top of the MixIt pattern, and I lined up the shoulder point and I lined up the center fronts, and I simply traced this shape of neckline onto the Liberty. It's really as simple as that. And I eliminated this little collar so that you just have a finished opening. And then it's a matter of figuring out how long you want this sleeve, and instead of my normal 22 inches or 23 inches or whatever it is, this is now only 17 inches long on this sleeve. So I decided to make it in the linen in the front and knit in the back, woven sleeves. So this is my $2,000 blouse that I think of my vacation every time I look at it. I've made a couple more. Here's another one that has a silk print on the front, the same silk print for the sleeves, and then this is a waffle knit for the back. You see a lot of this combo out in ready-to-wear. All kinds of ready-to-wear is done with mixtures of wovens and knits. And at first you think it's not going to happen because the fabrics would hang differently, but really they do just fine. They sew together just fine, they hang just fine. I've had no trouble combining those 2 fabrics to make another garment. So I decided to make one in this wonderful lyocell tencel rayon. So we have 3 colors of it in this fabulous dotted abstract print, but I love the way this fabric drapes and hangs and feels. We'll talk about rayon in a minute, but I want to go back to some of the one fitting issue that I did for this. So in order to make mine, I did just a few little things. I lengthened it to 2 inches like I did on this one from the original Liberty. I shortened the sleeve, but I kept the same hem allowances, and they're nice deep hem allowances. They're about 3 inches, 2.5 inches finished. So I like that aspect of this. That gives it a quality that you don't always see in every ready-to-wear or even sewing patterns. Okay, so I lengthened it, shortened the sleeve, I narrowed the shoulder, and I did a round back adjustment, because this is the kind of garment that when it hangs, it has a tendency to hike up in the back by the nature of the shape of the pattern piece, but also the shape of me. I'm getting a little more rounded, darn it. So in order to make this hang a little more level and get rid of some drag lines that you can tend to get when a garment hangs on your body and you're full through here, I did a round back adjustment. So I'm going to show you how I did that. All of these techniques that I've referred to, the narrow shoulder, the round back that I'm going to do, are all in our fashion fitting encyclopedia and workbook. These are a pair, really. This is the first one you probably want to get. It has all of the techniques in it that I talk about all the time. The ones that I've done over and over and over again as I've seen students, as I've traveled around, and also here at our events in Topeka. And this is its companion. It has all of the same techniques, plus a couple of extras, but you have this is a really fun thing to do. You have a sheet that gives the description and referring to the page number of the encyclopedia, you have a little half-scale template that you can cut out and actually follow the instructions for that particular modification, and then you just paste that little, it's like paper dolls, you know? I'm a paper doll girl. You paste in what you've done, and it's a record of how to do that fitting alteration. All right, so back to rounded back. So for those of you who've sewn a while, you know that you probably have a technique for doing a round back adjustment. And the one that I learned in college and did for years and years and years required a dart somewhere, because it was a shape that you would slice this and spread it and create a dart. So that changed this angle up here, and it required a dart, generally in the neckline somewhere, which nobody really wants if they don't have to have it. So this is a technique that I learned out of a book that is really old. It's about 50 years old. I can't believe that now. But Kirsten Martinson, who was the founder of Quick Sew, wrote a lot of books, but back in the 70s, she wrote a book on pattern alteration. And this is the technique that came from that book, which I picked up at a garage sale for $2. And you can't buy anymore, although there have been some around on some sites that sell old books. But I think I've talked about it enough now, I think they're all gone. So anyway, here's how you do it. So if you don't exactly know where you are the fullest in your back, then just measure down about 4 inches. That seems to be the most average place for most people. Measure down 4 inches and draw a line that is perpendicular to this center back straighted grain. And you come over here, but you stop at the seam allowance of the arm's eye, because that's one thing you do not want to disturb. You don't want to change the shape or distance of the arm's eye. And then you draw another line perpendicular to this line straight up. So you have this whole wedge now that you can cut out and move. My tape is coming off here. There we go. All right. So you can either stand in front of a mirror with a finished muslin or garment and determine how much you want to lengthen this, but that's not always going to happen because you haven't made it yet. So I think the average distance of spread here is about 5/8 of an inch. It could be a 1/2 inch, it could be an inch, but 5/8 seems to be the amount that I've used most often on most people. So you take that wedge that you've just cut out and you move it up and you insert some paper. And so this is an even 5/8 of an inch across here. Insert some paper, tape it down, and notice that this is spread, but this is still aligned along that line. So now all you have to do is reestablish your shoulder line, which is from the original neck point to the original shoulder point. Now you notice that that's a little more angled. Well, that's good, because rounding happens to drop the shoulders a little bit as well. So they kind of go hand in hand, a sloped shoulder and a rounded back. Don't think of this as raising the back, neck. Think of this as adding more fabric so that this will drop. Just think of that as more fabric. I think sometimes we can overthink what this is all about. That's just more fabric. Now, if you're lengthening this a lot, let's say 1 inch or 1 1/4 inches, something like that, this is going to get even more dramatic of a curve, of a straight line. And so it may be that this will be a lot longer than the front. Well, I suggest that you ease that then. Let's say it's 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch longer than the front shoulder. Just run an ease line across there, steam that, draw it up just a little bit, because that will also help come over the curve of your back. So that is a round back adjustment, and one that I use all the time now on all of my tops, whether it's a t-shirt, a woven top, a jacket, doesn't matter. This is what I do. But remember, you just want to go to that seam line, nothing more. Do we have any questions about that? All right.
No, there was a question about the side
Of the side seam, okay.
About the side seam of your Liberty MixIt Fusion.
Yeah.
Do you need to put tape on the side seam for stabilizing the seam since it's on the bias?
No, I don't put tape on the seams to stabilize it. By the time I've sewn it with cotton thread and serge finished it, no. I don't tape seams. I need fabric to do what it's going to do, to relax. I don't want my seams to hang up, and so I never tape the seams. And this is not, it's slightly on the bias, but this is not true bias. True bias would be clear over here.
How do you know if you need the round back adjustment?
Well, if you can stand in a three-way mirror, take your garment and go to Dillard's and stand in their three-way mirror in the dressing room, and you'll see that there are diagonal crease lines that start at some point here, generally the fullest part, and they drag to the side seam. Or you can stand in the mirror and things are hiked up or falling away. It's interesting. You think of this as somewhat of an older person's issue, but that's not necessarily the case. There are a lot of younger people too, and some people are very rounded right up here, and some people are rounded here and down here. It can be in a lot of different places. And if you have someone who can take a picture of you, and then you can sort of identify where you are the roundest, if you even want to know. But also, if somebody could measure, let's say these diagonal creases start right here. Well, it'd be nice if you could measure where that is from the center back so that you would know where to draw that first horizontal line. But if you can't do that, then that 4 inches works pretty well.
Did you do a narrow shoulder adjustment?
I did do a narrow shoulder adjustment on this. The Liberty shirt has an extended shoulder. Mine is still a little bit extended, but on a medium, which is what I have on, the shoulder is 6 inches, and I'm 5. I only adjusted it a ½ inch so that it hangs off about a ½ inch. But you can keep going if you want to. But this original garment was built for about an inch extension off of the shoulder.
Which line do you use for the shoulder seam? I think if you want to point out which the line that you redid there.
All right, so you can see that there's the original shoulder seam. When this gets moved up, then that black line is the original, and now my new line is from the neck point to the shoulder point.
Should this adjustment be done on a t-shirt too?
I do it on a t-shirt, yes.
Getting ready to cut out the black and white skirt kit today. Skirts are out of my comfort zone. Struggling with length to make it as for somebody who's 5'3". Plan on wearing it with the West End jacket. Any guidance?
Guidance for shortening it. There are length and shorten lines on the pattern. If you're 5'3", I'm 5'6". If you want to shorten it 2 or 3 inches, that's really not a problem. Now, you could follow the lengthen and shorten lines of the pattern, but you could also cheat a little bit and maybe take an inch off the top, an inch off the bottom, and maybe an inch in the middle. Kind of split those distances a little bit and not do all 3 inches just on that lengthen and shorten line.
When would you do a forward shoulder adjustment?
When would you do a forward shoulder adjustment? Well, I probably need one. I haven't really looked at this. But if your pattern is, if your garments are back on your shoulder, that's when you need one. If you're following the, see, I'm probably This is an adjustment I should remember to do, and I frankly forget. But my shoulder seam should probably be forward about 1/2 inch. I'm rolled forward, and that's an adjustment where you take the shoulder seam and you just pivot it forward. So you're taking away off of the front, and you're adding that same distance to the back. You know, when I did a Craftsy fitting solo class, and I did all of these shoulder adjustments, and I did them in the order that you want to do them, because some people have all of these issues. This book is also written in the order that you do them. So just remember that. Narrowing shoulders is the very first one that you do. And then you do forward or sloping or balancing or other alterations. But the narrow shoulder adjustment is the very first one.
Okay. A couple people had that question, so
yeah,
that takes care of that. So that's
okay.
That's it.
All right. So let's talk about sewing on rayon. So rayon is an interesting fabric. It's been around for a long time. It was actually invented in I always have to look this up because I can't believe it, 1846. I find that just kind of amazing, actually. And it is made out of regenerated cellulose from various trees, and the trees vary depending on the manufacturer and where they are located in the world. And now they're even using bamboo. So we think of rayon as a natural fabric, and it almost is, except for years and years and years in the processing of making the cellulose fibers from various woods into fabric. They use chemicals to do that. So there are manufacturers now who have figured out how not to use those chemical solvents to make them. So you might see on some rayon, this is organic, certified organic rayon. But for the most part, you're not going to see much of that. And know that you're almost there being organic, sustainable, but not quite. Lyocell is actually what this fabric is. And lyocell is a trade name for a method of making rayon, because there's a few processes of making rayon. And lyocell is a trade name. So if you see that, you know it's tencel. And tencel is a generic name for rayon as well. So the reason that it was invented to begin with was that they were looking for an alternative for silk fabric, which was very expensive, still is. It's become ridiculously expensive to buy silks. And so rayon was known and is known as artificial silk. So there are properties about rayon that feel like silk, act like silk. It's very absorbent, it's very cool, it's very soft, it's very comfortable. I've been getting wonderful emails from everyone as a result of the question and answer session last week, where I talked about the fact that I'm looking for ideas of what you are wearing today. And thank you for all those emails. That's really helped me. I'm going to be writing an article about that, and I'm just curious to know what people are really wearing out there in the world. And comfort is the singular common word that everybody is interested in. They want to be comfortable. So rayon is comfortable, it's cool, and it acts like silk, but it feels like really fine cotton, certain silks as well, but it's not shiny like some silks. So I did a class for Craftsy called Sewing with Silks. That class is still available on Craftsy. It's still one of my #1 classes that still sells. And in that class, I do sew the Liberty shirt pattern from start to finish. So not only do you learn how to make the Liberty, but you learn how to sew on silk. Sewing on rayon is essentially the same as sewing on silk. So there's a certain slipperiness to it and a certain amount of care that it takes to sew it. So first of all, I use cotton thread. And sometimes I'll use the 2-ply cotton thread if I happen to have it on hand. I don't always have it on hand, but we sell it here. And if you ask for thread on this fabric, we might give you the 2-ply thread rather than 3-ply thread, which is the normal thread. You know that you can add thread to your order of any fabric, by the way, from 1 to 4 spools. I used a 70 millimeter needle, universal needle. I could have used a 65. I can't see to thread it, so 70 is pretty much my go-to needle at this point. 75 would be all right. I really don't use 80s much anymore. It has to be a pretty heavy fabric for me to use an 80, so I've dialed my needle sizes down to 75, 70s, 65s, and even 60s sometimes. One of the things that I found is you don't want to overpress this fabric. First of all, it does press really well. It does wrinkle, but not terribly. It only wrinkles if you wad it up. But as you're wearing it, you know, you're going to get some perhaps wrinkles on the sleeves or something like that, but it's not known for its super wrinkling properties. It does press well, but you don't want to overpress it because it can get a little bit shiny and it can get too flat. Your edges can get too flat if there is such a thing. For serging, I use my Isacord thread in my serger, 3 spools of that. I've collected spools of Isacord over the years. I walk into my Bernina dealer here and buy 3 spools of a color. They think I'm embroidering with it. I don't tell them that I'm serging with it because there are some dealers who say you can't use it in your serger, but I'm telling you you can. We just need to educate them that we garment sewers use some products for something else. One of the things I learned when I made this, I didn't have the instructions at home when I made this. And so there is this split in the seam, and this dot has to be lined up perfectly for this condition to happen. And so you have a seam that needs to die into a hem. And the first hem, I think one side or the other, has a seam that I serged together. Sew the seam, serge the ridges together. Then I had to, clip it, and I have a little bit of a raw edge that I'm not crazy about on one side. Well, then I got smart and realized that if I serge finish each piece individually, and I could press the seam open, then it died beautifully into those hems. And that's the way the instructions are written, had I had them at home to read them. All right, I interfaced the front facings and the back facing, and I used our Ultra Shear fusible interfacing, which is the product that we use here at the Sewing Workshop. We've used this product for years. It is an ultra shear, beautiful tricot, so it has some stretch to it, interfacing. It's the only one we really use around here. It's not inexpensive. It comes from Japan. It's 36 inches wide or so, but I think it's well worth it. It takes a light fuse, but it does the job, and it doesn't seem to matter what fabric I'm using it on. I can use it on this drapey rayon, beautiful silks. I can use it on wool, cotton, anything. It just seems to work for every fabric, and I've never had any problem with it releasing, which is the problem with some interfacings. I don't pre-wash this. I will cut out my piece and steam the interfacing, which is on top of my fabric, and I'll watch it just shrink up just a little bit. And when it seems to be done doing that, then I will press it down using a silk organza press cloth. Sometimes, as with the back facing, when you're trying to marry a narrow, curved shape fabric to interfacing, it's really fussy and you begin to lose the shape. So I will interface a section of my fabric, pre-interface a section, and then cut out my back facing so that it's pre-interface. It's so much easier. And then there are various hem widths on this pattern. The bottom hem allowance is 3 inches. And then a 1/2 inch is turned down, so you have a finished 2.5 inch hem. So I've cut my templates using a manila file folder, 3 inches for the hem allowance, and then another one that's 2.5 inches. And so I pre-press the fabric up and over this template to get my 3 inches. Then I put this template in that crease and press a 1/2 inch up over the bottom of this template works like a dream, particularly on these slippery fabrics. You want to nail these down. These can really get a little bit out of control, and to get really even hems, you want to understand how to use templates. That is in that tutorial as well, the Liberty MixIt Fusion. The side hems here are a different width. And so the finished, or the hem allowance is 1 7/8, and the finished hem is 1 3/8. A little bit narrower. So what does that mean? That means that you have an asymmetric miter. Maybe I should show it. I can show it closer up here. So you have two hem allowances of different widths coming together for an asymmetric miter. Now, I've demonstrated this in past Facebook Lives. It's in the instructions for the Liberty shirt. It is also in our Mastering Miter book. So, let's talk about fabric. So we have three colorways of this particular rayon. We have the saffron, which I have on, which is right here, which is kind of a mellow goldenrod color. We have mauve. I think this is really a beautiful color. It's very neutral, but there's definitely a mauve pink cast to it, gray tone, so on. And then we have this rose color, which is sort of a soft coral. So those are the three rayons. Now I have on my standard Hudson pants, and I have it on in the pink viscose linen. So this is like linen, but with the viscose, which is also rayon. You know, we have viscose, we have lyocell, all of those words for rayon. It's one of my favorite fabrics, and believe it or not, I combined my soft pink with my goldenrod or saffron top, and I like this combination. I thought it was pretty interesting. So, Hudson pants. So I put together some other fabrics that I think would make great pants, or of course, any of these would make a beautiful Liberty or MixIt shirt. So starting at the bottom, we have, this is the viscose linen as well, in this very light putty color that we call limestone. Very neutral, not white, not beige, has a little bit of gray to it. I think it's a very nice neutral color. And also goes well with the saffron, in addition to some other colors up here. This is clay linen. Beautiful weight. This is pant weight linen, but it would make a great Liberty shirt as well. See, I like these pinks and saffron colors together, the clay colors together. So then we have the pink that I have on, the blush pink, which also goes with the mauve rayon. And then to go a little bit darker, this is this linen and silk. So that's another combo that I've used many times for pants. When you feel this fabric, there's a certain stiffness to it, but when you wash this, it becomes very soft and beautifully drapey. You can see it's a little bit narrower, so you want to make sure you get enough of this, but it's one of my favorite fabrics. So this is called Oyster. Then we have this linen, which we call Dusty Rose. And I think that's beautiful with this rose dot. I'm pretty sure it'll go with this. Can't hold it up there exactly, but I think so. And then we have this new generation of linen that we've gotten in that I haven't really talked a lot about. But you can see that it's already rumpled, and that is exactly what I want. There are times when I just want a very casual, easy fabric to work with, and this is linen, pale pink. Here's the same linen and silk that this is, this time in off-white. So you can see that it has this crisp hand to it, but washed, beautiful. Now, last week when I talked about cross-dyed linens, I said we had all kinds of other cross-dyed linens, and we do. This is one that just came in. Last week I was talking about cross-dyed linens that had white warp and then a colorful woof thread. Well, this is like this color, one direction, and ochre color the other direction. So up close you can see the two colors of cross-dye linen. But I think it reads as one soft kind of clay color. And then, I don't know, it's like everybody has to have a pair of pants out of just something quite neutral that goes with everything. And that's what this one is. This is a beautiful linen from Belgium. You can always tell good fabrics. They always have a great selvage or some kind of a design in the selvage. This is a great fabric. And we call this oatmeal. So this is linen. So there are tons of combinations here that work together. But I love this whole tone-on-tone, pale, warm, cool combo. I'm wearing warm and cool. I like that.
Okay, is the viscous linen blend drapey enough for a top?
Oh yes, the viscous linen is fabulous for a top. I've made a splice top, a Florence shirt. We've made lots and lots of tops out of viscous linen. Here we go. Yeah.
Is the rayon easy to launder?
Yes, it's totally easy to launder. Just wash and dry it as you normally would, and you're good to go. Now, the rayons used to not have great color fastness. I mean, this is like 30, 40, 50 years ago, which is one of the things that people didn't like about rayon. But that's all been corrected with these new trademarked lyocell's and other processing of creating rayon. So I don't think you have to worry about that.
Would you pre-wash it?
I would pre-wash every fabric. I've learned my lesson. I think I told the story last week about the viscose linen, which I didn't think would shrink, and I washed my pants, and now I can't wear them, and Betsy's getting them.
So could you do the Liberty MixIt out of the viscous linen?
I would. It'd be beautiful.
Is the coral rayon warm or cool tone?
Well, it's cool, but there's a nice richness to it. So it's a little bit hard to say, but I suppose it does fall in the cool category of things.
Especially when you put it next to what you're wearing.
Yeah. See, this is the perfect off-white that goes with the dot of these three dotted fabrics.
But you're also saying that you're mixing. You're mixing the
Yeah,
cools
I'm mixing
and
the cool and warm. To have the warm top and then the cool, I have this combination on right here.
So the interfacing, do you have a trick for making sure you have the right versus the wrong side, like the side that you fuse versus the side that you don't?
Well, if you fuse it to the wrong side, you'll know it because it's on the bottom of your iron. But you can feel the difference. There is a rougher side. I can feel it. It's pretty evident. It's not that subtle. But there's definitely a rough side and a smooth side. And obviously the rough side is the glue side, which would go down on your fabric.
Do you think you can make a Hudson pant out of the dot fabric?
Oh yeah. Hudson pant dotted fabric would be fabulous. I thought about that actually. But it seems like I've talked about pants a lot, and I kind of wanted a new top for summer. So yes, make great pants.
Do you remember how much fabric you used approximately for your top?
Yeah, I used 2.5 yards. I think it actually calls for 2 3/4 on the pattern. And I had a 2.5 yard piece. I think I got away with it.
Maybe the shorter sleeve and the different...
Yeah, different neck. I don't know, but I did get away with it.
Can you suggest patterns for the wrinkle linen on the middle left side?
For this?
Yes.
Well, this to me is like West End pants, Chesney pants, Hudson pants, but also I think it would make a great top like this, a really super casual top. It'd make a great splice top, cottage shirt, a zona, you know, just shirt, big shirt, not shaped particularly, just a nice oversized big shirt.
What do you use to mark your fabrics? Do you use a water-soluble pen or chalk?
I mark my fabrics, first of all, I mark my notches using scissors, and I clip into the seam allowance, either a single notch or a double notch, whatever it is. If I'm marking dots, then I'm going to use a tailor tack with silk thread. And we talk about that in our skills tutorial. It's just one complete stitch of a single strand of silk thread. Now, if I'm doing something in the process of making something and I need a marked line, then I'm going to use a chalkener, a very thin line of chalk. I don't use markers much. I can't say I've never used them, but generally I do not use them because either they go away too soon or they never go away.
Why do you use silk thread?
I use silk thread because it doesn't damage the fabric when you're doing a hand stitch through it, but mostly because as I sew through a tailor tack, I can get it out. That silk thread will come out really easily.
Do you have any knits for the back?
Oh, I'm sure we do. I didn't take a look at that, but if you want us to work with that for you, I'd be happy to work with you. We have lots and lots of knits, and I'm sure we could come up with great backs for any of these.
And we had a couple more detailed questions about yardage. I think maybe in different sizes, so we might have to get back to people on exact yardages.
I know that 3 yards will do it, because I'm pretty sure it was 2 3/4 or 2 7/8. So 3 yards ought to do it for sure.
And then if you're doing a separate back, maybe a yard for that separate back.
Right.
Okay. Will the wrinkled linen be good for a dress that's not very fitted?
Yes. Perfect. Summer dress.
Tosca, maybe?
Tosca dress. Absolutely. Yep. Pieces and parts of other dresses, like the Memphis. You can combine this with a knit and still use this for part of the Memphis dress.
I like that idea.
Yeah. Erin's on it.
Why don't we stay stitch armholes like we do necklines?
I have to think about that. I don't really know the answer to that. I've never given it much thought. The purpose of stay stitching is twofold, really. One is to stabilize something, but two, and almost more importantly for me, is it's a barrier that I can clip to so that a seam can then be attached to something else and turn and spread. So generally, seams at necklines have to change directions. They start out like this, and then when they're on, they have to spread when they're finished. You never clip an arm's eye, so there's no reason to stay stitch for that purpose. And by the time you've put the sleeve in it and sewn it, it's stable. So I've never done it. The only time I have ever stay stitched was back in the day when we were making faux Armani jackets. And our Armani sleeve is not eased at the sleeve head, it's eased under here. And if you run an ease stitch, which would be a stay stitching line underneath, that would allow you to have that ability to ease something and do what they call ease plus. But that is so rare we don't even really do that anymore. I'm not making any faux Armani jackets anytime soon.
Okay, so when you're doing a forward shoulder adjustment, does that fix when the sleeve is twisted?
It should somewhat, because when you move the seam forward, you move the dot on the sleeve forward the same amount. So that rotates the sleeve as well. So it does help.
Okay, sounds like she had a two-part question, but I think you answered that. So the only change in the sleeve then is adjusting the dot.
Exactly.
Okay. I had the MixIt tank armhole gap when I attached the bias, and I'm wondering how to prevent it.
Well, chances are it was through the bust area, I'm guessing. And you can do a couple of things. You can either add a bust dart to your tank pattern or add a bust adjustment without a dart, both of which are in that fitting book. But it sounds like you need to put that bias on and draw that up through there. So give that bias a stretch through this area, and that should help.
Does the silk and linen wrinkle like pure linen?
No, not at all. It wrinkles, but not even close to real linen.
Okay, I can look a little bit longer, but I don't see anything else.
Okay. One of the things I want to tell you is that if you order any one of the 3 dotted fabrics, we have some wonderful new buttons in. Now, we don't have buttons on our website, but we have the option now that you can add some thread to that order, or you can add buttons. It takes 5 buttons, and we will include 5 buttons with your order if you order the 5 buttons as an option when you're ordering these 3 fabrics. So the buttons that I have on here are brand new. You know, it's tricky to get buttons these days, I think. Maybe you all have better sources than I do, but all the button people that we used to order from have just vanished. So we do have some good sources, and these new buttons just came from Italy. They were hand-dyed for us, and they're special buttons. So just remember that if you order any of these 3 and include a button option, we'll include the buttons for you.
Okay, I see a few more if you want to answer a few
Sure.
more questions. So would the coral rayon go with the gray silk linen? I don't know if the white is looking gray or if the blush is looking gray. Maybe it's the top one.
That one? I think so. It goes with this and this, so I'm not sure which one we're talking about, but either one works.
Because the top one is, what do we call that one? Like a rose?
That is called
She said no, the
oyster.
darker.
Is that?
She said no, the darker color.
Oh, this one is mauve. You're talking about the dot or the? What are you talking about?
I don't. That's a good question.
Okay.
So maybe maybe thinking that the oyster silk linen is.
This is the oyster silk linen. This is the limestone silk linen. Excuse me, viscose linen. This is pure linen. All of these are more grade.
I'd say they
Did
all
I say
work.
linen? I meant to say linen. I hope I said that.
Yeah, 100% linen
Yeah.
on that one. Okay. I think they all go
Yeah.
together nicely.
I'm not sure you can make a mistake here. You know, like I love this with this. This has a rosy undertone, but it would go with this saffron. This looks really good with this. In fact, that's fantastic. Look at that.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
And she did verify the coral with the oyster was her question.
Coral, meaning
I think
meaning rose.
yes, a lot of people are calling that coral.
Okay, so this is rose with the oyster. Yes.
I think. Okay. A lot of people like the idea of including buttons on the order, so that's great.
Yeah.
Let's see. I love the beaded necklace you're wearing. Where did you get that?
Well, I got this in Barcelona. My daughter and I, after the Chateau Dumas a few years ago, took a train from Toulouse to Barcelona, spent a couple of days, and walked into a costume jewelry place and bought it.
The Craftsy class on Wednesday is listed as 1 p.m. Central Time, but I think Linda said noon last week. Can you confirm the time?
Actually, I think it's at 2. Apparently, we need to confirm the time.
Are we going to send out an email about that?
I think we are sending out an email,
Okay.
so we'll get that nailed down. I looked this morning and it said 2 o'clock on my calendar. I think I told Betsy 1 or noon, and I don't know.
I wonder if you put it on your calendar when you were gone in a different time zone. Sometimes that messes with things.
Maybe.
I don't know, but we'll confirm the time.
Yeah, we will confirm that. I need to figure that out, yes. Yes, tomorrow, join me for a question and answer session live on Craftsy. Ask me anything. Not hard, just anything. I have no idea what this is really all about. I've never done it for Craftsy, but they asked me to do a live session, and I figure the questions will just be random and interesting. So, hope you'll join me at whatever time.
There was another question that I just lost, so if you give me a second. Oh, someone was curious about the white silk linen. She couldn't find it. I don't know is there a number on there? Maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah, the number is 7-819-1.
Okay. So if you didn't want to launder the rayon, would you dry clean it?
I would dry clean it if you don't want to launder it, sure. You might want to launder it one time. Don't even have to dry it. And then dry clean it from then on. Dry clean the garment, which is what I tend to do. I would be hard pressed to put this garment in the washer. This will go to the dry cleaner.
Do you sell needles?
Do we sell needles? Mm-hmm. Machine or hand? We have hand sewing needles on our website.
I wonder if they mean machine needles because you were talking about machine needles earlier.
We do not, but the kinds of needles that I use are Schmetz, and honestly, you can buy those almost anywhere. But we don't sell them. Go to your machine dealership or even a big box store online. You know, I have every kind of needle in every size. Because if I have issues like skip stitches or a stitch that looks a little bit diagonal or something's going on, that's the first thing I'm going to change is my needle. And the second thing I'm going to change is my thread, either weight or brand. There are certain brands I don't use of thread. A couple of brands, 2 or 3 brands that I'll use.
Okay, you want to talk about the sales?
All right, so on sale. All the fabrics, I think there are 11 or 12 fabrics.
12.
12 fabrics. The Liberty shirt pattern, the MixIt shirt top and tank pattern. Both of those are printed. And the tutorial Liberty MixIt Fusion, which if you're going to do this, honestly, I suggest you get it. It'll just help you so much. Cut down your time of trying to figure it out on your own. It's a good tutorial. So that's it.
A couple more questions just came in. What's the color above the saffron dot?
This is called clay linen.
And then, which are the linen viscose blends again?
All right, the 2 linen viscose blends are the limestone and the dusty pink.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
That's it.
Well, next week we have a special surprise for you. Alex and I have been working on a really interesting project, so I hope you will join us, and I will see you next week. Have a great week.